The sun is shining, the pit lane is full, and qualifying is about to get underway here for the Blancpain GT Series Endurance Cup at Monza. It's the spiritual home, if you like, of the endurance part of the Blancpain GT Series. It was here it all began, going back a good few seasons. I know how the championship has evolved and grown. And this weekend, an entry of 54 cars, 11 brands, including some new cars as well on track. We have, for example, the new Nissan and the new Bentley, which is radically different. It's not so much an upgrade, it's a whole new car compared to last year's very successful Continental GT3. It's lower. The engine, for example, in the Bentley, there you can see them just in the bottom left of the shot in the pit lane. The engine is lower by 120 millimetres. It moved back towards the driver, 50 millimetres, so the centre of gravity is different. It's got a better aero package, it's handling better, and it's a serious bit of kit. And you need lots of grunt and go around Monza. Long pit straight, you've got the first tight chicane, back on the power through the Curva Grande, chicane, back on the power all the way around the Lesmo curves, chicane, and then long straight to the Parabolica, long pit straight to complete the lap. 5.7 kilometres long this circuit, 11 turns in total. Finding track space come qualifying is going to be very hard indeed. In the race, you're going to have lappery for the majority of it, and on the evidence of the free practice and pre-qualifying sessions yesterday, it is absolutely wide open. David Addison and John Watson trackside. John, what a sight, the pit lane, what an entry.
Well, I mean, that is just magnificent. And of course, Monza, the Autodromo, I call it the Cathedral of Speed, on its best display. The weather has been glorious all weekend. 54 GT3 cars lined up in echelon. Now, those of you with a long memory would remember starts when cars were in echelon, but no, this will be a rolling start, as ever is at Monza. But it is a field, and we've been here for 2 days, David. We have yet to see who is really going to be quick and who's just going to be quick, because everybody's been trying to conserve the sets of tyres. They had 5 sets at the weekend. They want to keep 3 new sets for qualifying and possibly 1 new set for one of the 3 stints in this afternoon's 3-hour event. So who is going to be quickest? Well, you can look at all the usual suspects, but there are going to be some really interesting driver-car pairings that we haven't seen before. I don't know.
And the other interesting thing about this is it's a whole new format for qualifying. Yes, it will still be in 3 parts, and drivers will do 1 section, depending on whether they are driver 1, 2, and 3. But it isn't just thinking now about the best lap time, because in the old days, whoever did the time, you would take that time for the car. That would be where you start from. Now, you take the time set in all 3 elements of qualifying, add them together, and you get an average. And the grid is going to be based on the best average lap time of each car, which means that you won't, for example, have an AM starting on a pro driver's time up at the pointy end of the grid. It should perhaps, and we'll see how it pans out, give the grid, John, a bit more normality?
Well, it would be more, as I would imagine a grid to be. I would expect that a pro car should start at the front. I would expect a really good Pro-Am car would start maybe 4 rows back or 5 rows back, depending, because now the emphasis in the Pro-Am category is not on the pro driver, because he will always deliver. All of a sudden, the 2 either gentleman drivers, or maybe call them bronze drivers in terms of the color grading of their licenses, are going to have to up their game to ensure that their car gets to as near to the front of the grid or to the front of their category as is possible. And that's a dynamic change that the AMs have never really had to contend with. Going to be interesting to see how they deal with that in qualifying. Much, much greater pressure on those drivers, in my view, for the first time.
And the other adjunct to all of this about qualifying, yes, we have a few cars as ever with 2 drivers, not 3. If you think back to the old days, you would miss Q1, and then the first driver would do Q2, the second driver would do Q3. Now, the lower graded driver must do 2 sessions, Q1 and Q2, to get an average out of that. So all those cars will be seen in 3 parts of the qualifying. Now, what happens if your car has a problem and you miss 1 part or 2 parts or 3 parts of qualifying? Well, if you do 2 elements of qualifying, you will start behind all the cars that do 3. If you only do 1, you start behind all the cars that may only have done 2, and if you don't get out at all, you start at the back. So you can't miss a section and get yourself up with a lower average.
The immediate reaction I have when you mention all that is that would teams have a strategic problem so they'd only do 2 of the sessions? But that's now covered with the regulation to prevent those creative directors or team principals or whomever in the pit lane thinking, well, we could just drive a coach and horses through this by saying, oh, we had a problem, the engine wasn't running properly, but we're okay now to go into the third. So that's been covered, and that's the right thing to do.
So we'll now start to see, as John rightly points out, who is quick, but then when we get to Q2, we need to start looking at the average. So we've got one screen giving us the best lap in the individual session, and we have another which will talk about the average lap as well. So this might get a bit confusing. We'll see how we go. The teams are on top of all of this and trying to analyse the strategy as well, and of course work out when they're best place to send out their quickest driver. Is it in Q1, Q2 or Q3? Does it not matter anymore?
In theory, I would say Q3 ought to be quickest because the track has not been used overnight. I think there was a single-seater practice session on briefly. So these cars came off track 6:30 Saturday evening, and tracks are in a way a living thing. They change, and particularly when you go into night time, and there's elements of blown dust, debris, detritus that gets onto the racetrack. So the track, in my view, will improve as these sessions go forward. But it's a team call. I mean, if you're in a Pro-Am car, would you put your AMs out first and let them do their best? Or would you put the Pro out first and say, well, that's your benchmark, try and get us close to it? So a Pro team might do a different thing from an AM team or a Pro-Am team.
And would you keep a car out for as long as possible in those 15 minutes, or just go for one lap?
It's essentially, as is always the case with fresh rubber, your first flying lap, assuming you get a clear lap, ought to be your best. That's the point when the tyre is going to be at the peak of its performance. Now, the 2018 Pirelli tyre, which is a version of it has been introduced here this weekend, there's a difference in the way the tyre responds to drivers' inputs. And last year, the tyre had a slightly more peaky point in its performance. Now it's a little bit more of a rounded off, flattened one. Nevertheless, the new tyre on its first flying lap ought to give you the best lap time. But of course, with 54 cars going out to complete a lap, finding that clear lap, not tripping over somebody who's on an out lap or an in lap, always the real mastery of qualifying is getting a clear lap.
So Guy Smith at the wheel of the number 7 Bentley out on track. And Bentley, this, as I was saying pre-session, is the new car with this whole new rear wing assembly. Bentley have allowed M Sport in the design of this to be a lot more cavalier. The original car, don't call it an old one, it's the original car, was very much owing a lot to the road car design. For this Evolution second generation car, as you look at Jules Gounod, new to the Bentley 7 squad, the M Sport engineers have been allowed a lot more freedom, so it's a far more aggressive car, it's lower, and that whole rear wing assembly, John, as you were talking about yesterday, really does give it a sense of purpose.
Well, I mean, I think it's a dinner party table. You get 6 around it, all you have to do is find somewhere to put the chairs. I mean, it is massive. Everything about the Bentley, you look at the car, it says to me aggression. I mean, everything is so much more tailored to motor racing. Another thing Andy Suchek this morning was just pointing out, said, we sit now further back, more towards the centre of the car, whereas in the road car, the original Bentley Continental GT3, it was an adaptation of that car. This is a purpose-built race car, and the road car, which will be produced up in Crewe, up in the northwest of England, will reflect more of the race car than it would have done in the original, the Gen 1, if you wish to call it that.
Stephen Kane was also showing me last night how the seat doesn't move anymore. So if you've got drivers of differing heights, different builds, you can't do anything with the seat. But what you can do, and perhaps this goes back to the road car in a sense, you can move the steering wheel closer. You can also move the pedal box closer.
I mean,
but the seat stays.
Nissan have done the same thing with Evolution 2, Nissan GTR. I think the reason teams are looking at that kind of setup, there's probably logical reasons why you might do it, but principally, it's become really not ideal to have an adjustable seat, because in the effect of an impact, if you have a very big impact, it's possible for the seat actually to become dislodged and move. So therefore, if you have that seat rigidly attached to the chassis, and you then just have the pedals moving backwards and forwards of the steering column, back of it, up and down, whatever, it's got a strong safety element as well.
I think I'm right in saying that it's actually an FIA mandate now, that it's not a seat, it's a safety cell, and that's a legacy of Alan Simonson's fatal accident at Le Mans, where the seat moved, so it's now mandated by the FIA. However, the Bentley looks fantastic, and at the moment the fastest time that we've got in the session has come from number 62, which is Alex Brundle in the SRO Motorsports Aston Martin. So Alex Wisbrick was in the gravel yesterday, but at the moment he's done a 1:49.322 to go quickest of all.
Now that car actually was, I think, ended up about 6th quickest in the second of the sessions on Saturday afternoon. They did fit a set of new tyres to achieve that. They picked up 2 seconds, just bang, by putting on that fresh set of tyres. I'm assuming that Alex Brundle will be out of that set of tyres because they will want to keep one of the 4 remaining sets or 3 remaining sets back for whichever of the drivers they might choose. Usually it will be the driver that does the 3rd stint, and whoever that might be, he will get the benefit of a brand new set. Everybody else will use sets that have been used, and you try to keep the mileage off. And what we saw yesterday from what I would call the teams that are looking for pole position or going to lead the race was they did the minimum number of laps they can, because they know it's only now that they can start to use those tyres available and go out and look for pole position. Well, that's slightly, I thought they might have tried to make the chicane there, so 76, which has just gone quickest. That's the sister car to is that the sister car to Alex Brundle?
I think so.
It is.
Out of SRO Motorsport,
Yeah.
yes. Porsche goes through the Manthey racing car. He hasn't got a problem, which is why it's keeping out of the way, because it's not picking up pace again.
No,
It's at
it's not.
76. This is the Mathieu Vazivière, Jake Dennis, Nicky Team car. Now, Vazivière has gone fastest on his previous lap, so maybe he's just bailed. It's getting out of the way. Vazivière has done a 1:48.680. Now, there is a sight to warm many a heart, John. It is not only a Porsche, it is a quick Porsche, and it's a Porsche that has a chance of winning.
Yes, and to all intents and purposes, it is a factory Porsche run by the Manthey race team. And we know that this car, again, didn't show its true pace. Expect to see something a little bit impressive, maybe even more than a little bit impressive. It's just a single entry from the Manthey Racing up against the might of the Mercedes, the Audis, the Bentleys, whatevers.
But you look around the circuit, that shot we had in the garage, lots of engineers in Porsche factory uniform. Go to the media centre, there are 2 people in Porsche factory uniform. This is a works effort in all but name.
The only thing missing for me is that the classic department of the factory teams, or the department in Porsche that now looks after customers like me, they don't have. I could have done with taking a suitcase back of spare parts from my old 356.
Are you listening, Porsche?
That's the message. That is the
for the
message.
future round, yes. Now, the message that 911 gives is it's quick, it goes forth. Fred McAvicky at the wheel of it goes forth fastest now, 1:48.633 to the absolute best last sector. So the car is good, in other words, on the 2 straights. Down to the parabolic and back up again, up to the timing line. There, into the chicane. Oops.
They overran it. He was just a bit too late on the brakes and had to. So that lap he's just completed, puts him 4th place. The next lap will suffer. He may even decide to come in. This is the problem. If you're a quick car and you're finding yourself through a field of cars that are not your natural competitor. 24. This is the Lamborghini Gallardo, the Writer-entered car. Yet again, a car that is no longer in production has gone fastest overall in 1st sector, coming across the start-finish line. And is it going to go quickest overall? Strange, it ends up in 11th place.
So 24 is being driven by Lena Marinek at the moment. It's Hans Reiter's car. We've also got a change at the top of the times because 54 is currently the quickest. This is the Emil Frey Racing Jaguar, Alex Fontana at the wheel. 2nd fastest now, 72, Mikhail Alyoshin in the SMP Racing Ferrari. 3rd, Attempto's Audi, 66, Peter Schrothorst. 4th is Fred McAvicky. Down to 5th is Mathieu Vazivière. And 6th, Luca Stolz in Black Falcon Mercedes number 4. Where, you might ask, is 63 Lamborghini of Andrea Caldarelli.
12th place.
Indeed so.
No, it may be 12th right now. Just looking to see the number of laps it's completed. I mean, that is the car, if you had to be put on the spot and say which car would you think is going to win this race, I think the consensus based on history and the form they've shown already this year, the 63 would be your car. Not necessarily the case. It's so open, and we don't know because, as I mentioned earlier, so many of the teams did not show their hand on Friday, but particularly yesterday, with the full potential of what they've got.
The new Bentley, the new Nissan were only homologated this weekend, so the BOP has been harder perhaps to get to for Claude Sermon, the technical director of the championship. There is 54 Alex Fontana in the Emil Frey Jaguar. Now this is a car that we've talked about, John, for season after season, often sadly in its early days surrounded in smoke or having problems, and then it had its overall podiums and a Pro-Am class win, and here it is at the moment, topping the times. Alex Fontana doing a very good job, and it's great to see how this project has moved on. And the Emil Frey team very busy now, because they've not only got the Jaguars, they've got the Lexus as well.
Yes, I mean, the Lexus is what you might describe broadly as current technology. The Jaguar is 10 years old fundamentally, but has evolved, and they've found pace first of all, and then they have found reliability. It was at times a painful process for the Emil Frey team, but they managed to do so in the 2016 end of the 16th season and through 17, and here they are currently quickest overall in Q1,
which has got 4 more minutes to go. As you look at 88, which will be a quick car all day, I'm sure. It is Tristan Vautier, Daniel Junqueira and Raffaele Marciello, winner last week in the Blancpain GT Series Asia. The car currently is 16th fastest in the hands of Tristan Vautier, and it goes no quicker, surprisingly. Lost about 5 seconds on
that was a slow lap, whether it was deliberately slow just to try and recover some of the tyre performance or looking for track position. So he's got a Mercedes and an Audi behind them. They're battling down into the first chicane. So, I mean, the 88 car, again, one of those cars that you have to say, looking at the driver lineup, the potential, the Mercedes-AMG GT3, a race winner.
Just to prove how close it is, by the way, we've already got 2 cars on an identical time. Bearing in mind, this is around 5.7 kilometres. Guy Smith and Alex Frasinetti have both done a 1:49.006. 12th and 13th they are on the classification, but to the 1,000th, equal time. And we have the top 20 covered by under 9/10 of a second at the moment. So you have to say that the BOP worked.
Now we have got a little sweep going on, I gather, behind the scenes of the television production. So put on the spot, who do you think is going to win? And a car has just gone through screen, which is the car I nominated. David, it's over to you.
What, to pick a winner?
Yeah.
Crikey.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I said too. How can you pick a winner?
You can't.
I mean, maybe after qualifying, you could say, well, that car, that driver lineup, whatever, is going to get the job done.
Fastest.
Yep. And that is Dries Van Voort.
Exactly. So this is the one you picked?
I didn't say that.
Oh,
I didn't say that.
The impression I got.
Oh.
A 1:48.197, best time of the weekend now. This is the Stracker Mercedes that we're looking at, which is currently down in the 30s in terms of its classification. 2 minutes on the clock still.
Interesting, this is the car that Chris Buncombe, the brother of Alex Buncombe, and of course, NBF of Jensen Buncombe. Oh, Button, sorry. One and the same thing, really, isn't it?
The Somerset boys. Yeah, Chris got done twice yesterday for speeding in the pit lane.
Oh, was Chris?
Yeah, there was a transponder glitch, but yes, both occasions it was Chris.
We did give them, whoever the driver, at the time I didn't know, but it probably was a glitch. I mean, Chris is a pretty smart guy, and he's been pretty successful in his racing in the past, and it's not the kind of sort of sucker punch he's going to fall for.
No. Yeah, Le Mans class winner, Chris Buncombe, but he spent a few seasons out of the cockpit. It's great to have him back, doing a very good job. Stracker very pleased with his pace in pre-season testing. He goes across the timing line, but does that move him up significantly? It does not, I'm afraid to say. How's Grasser getting on?
Well, I mean, they look quick.
Yeah, personal best for Calderelli in Sector 1.
Yeah, coming up into the Ascari chicane, and he's just got to be a little bit, I would say, patient coming through the chicane, but really when you get to the exit, then that's your best chance to try and use the aerodynamics of your competition, the Audi ahead of it. He's probably too far behind to get any meaningful draft, so he doesn't want to get again too close to the rear of the Audi coming into Parabolica, but wants to then get on the throttle now and drive the car as hard as he can. At this part, the aerodynamics are not going to really hurt you. It's the entry and the mid-corner bit, but there it shouldn't be a problem. And can he pick up anything? Identical cars and all but body skins in effect. It's a broad sweeping statement, but they are VW Audi Group owned products.
They have the same floor pan, don't they? Same chassis. Over the timing line there goes 43. Stracker Mercedes. This is the Maxi Book car that's just gone 5th fastest, 1:48.621. I think this is where I'm leaning towards my winner, you know, Mercedes 43.
I mean, it's again one of maybe 10 cars that are immediately obvious. Max Book, Max Goetz in this car. Oops, my paperwork flies all over the floor.
And we're riding on board now with Maxi Book. Comes up towards the Curva Grande. The car beautifully balanced and lots of torque.
One reason that you might say that this car is one of the pre-race favourites is not because of Goetz or because of Book. is because of ex-McLaren Alvaro Parent. And Alvaro Parent is somebody I hold in extremely high regard for his ability and what he did with the McLaren project over 4 years. But he became, in a way, surplus to requirements, and now has found a very nice berth in the Straka team. Nicola Ventus employing him and giving him a car that is really, probably for the first time in a number of years, you know, an acknowledged race-winning car pretty much anywhere, not one that might win a race once a season, which was more of the case when he was at McLaren.
But it's extraordinary to think somebody with his CV is surplus to requirements.
I think it's just what's going on currently within the McLaren group, and there's a reorganisation. There will be, I think, the 720 at the very end of the original MP412C is coming down the road. Of course, they've got the Senna version, which is more of a track day car, I think. So a lot of things happening within McLaren, and I think when that then all is, I think, announced to the world, you will see what their objectives have been, and hopefully they're going to try and take that project forward and get more success.
Checker flag out, as you can see, and Dries van Thor it is that tops the times. Now that was the easy part of qualifying, because that was one session. We don't have to worry about averages in that, but we will from here on in. So Dries van Thor, Alex Fontana, Mikael Aliosh in the top three, Peter Skonfors fourth, Maxi Brooks fifth, Fred McAvee's Porsche sixth.
Dries van Thor just noses the car into the parking bays. You can't really, when the entire field is in the pit lane, park as you would normally park for a driver change pit stop. One of the changes that is different, let's say, from previous seasons, is when you come in, there's a time delta, which is, you can maybe explain that better than I can, but other objectives are the car must be absolutely flush with the garage. In other words, if it comes in at an angle or points out at an angle, you can't make your pit stop.
All the drivers from WRT.
Just listening to what Dries is saying. I don't know if he's speaking what their language. When you hold the brake, you can go on. The right one with the brake is fixed, but the left one is flat. Everything for a brake car is really good. Braking for T1 is a bit.
So let's have a look at the times at the end of qualifying. First part, it is Dries van Thor then, who does the top time. Alex Fontana just 45 thousandths slower. Third quickest, Mikael Aliosh ahead of Peter Skonfors, and then Maxi Brooks Mercedes fifth. Fred McAvee's Porsche sixth, ahead of Mathieu Bazivière. Vincent Abril eighth in the Bentley. Ninth, Lukas Stolz Mercedes. 10th, the Mercedes of Jules Kowiak. 11th, the Lamborghini Gallardo of Leonard Marianek, and then the BMW 12th in the hands of Jens Klingmann. 13th fastest, 63, which is the Andrea Calvarelli Lamborghini. 14th, Adrian Tombe for Straka. 15th, the Aston Martin. Ahmad Al-Hathi doing a very good job. 16th, Guy Smith in the Bentley, ahead of Alex Frassinati, Tristan Vautier, Matt Parry's new Nissan, and Alex Brundle. 20th from Vitaly Petrov and Stuart Leonard. Stefan Ortelli 23rd in the Jaguar, and Christian Kleen in the Lexus 24th. 25th quickest for Barwell in the number 78 Lamborghini is Michele Beretta. DTM champ Marco Wittmann next from Said Al Faisal, Rolf Icon, Ezequiel Perez Compact 29th, Renat Salikov 30th ahead of Antoine Jung, Michael Bronizeski, and then Ben Barney-Coates, McLaren only 33rd ahead of Chris Buncombe, Arno Santamato, and it is Philippe Guillaume who is 36th in the car that he shares with Fabian Barthez amongst others. 37th, the Attempto Audi with Nicholas Polar at the wheel of it, ahead of Jordan Witt, and then Duncan Cameron. Nick Homerson is 40th from Salah Yolok, Chris Harris and Jean-Luc Bobelik. 44th, Jürgen Herring's Porsche, ahead of Alex Demergian's Ferrari. Adrian Amstut's Lamborghini, good to have him back, ahead of the Derek Pierce, Team Parker Racing Bentley, and Mark Rostam for Santalot Junior team in the Audi. 49th, the Valkenhorst BMW of Anders Buchart, ahead of Rick Hume, the Korean driver. Miro Konopka's yellow Mercedes comes next, ahead of Crichton Landudis, Giuseppe Cipriani and Dimitri Parhofer to round out the 54 cars. Well, Dries van Thor tops the times, and let's hear from the man of the moment. 45 thousandths quicker, he's with our reporter Dakota.
Dries, your fastest on track so far, all good?
At the moment it's going well, yeah. I mean, it's still Q2 and Q3 coming up, so but you know, it's looking good for the average lap time, but hopefully my teammates, they will, and I hope, but they will do a good job. So yeah, let's see. It's Q2 and Q3 is coming up now, so let's see where we are.
Now, we saw you giving some of the other Audi drivers some advice. What exactly were you telling them?
That's a bit, no, I mean, you know, that the car is running well. The WRT guys and Audi guys did a good job overnight. Yesterday we were struggling a little bit, but they made the right changes we worked on. So you know, the car was feeling good out there, and I just gave them the feeling that the car is feeling good. So yeah, now let their magic work and see how it goes.
Thanks.
Interesting as well, watching that it wasn't just his co-drivers he was talking to, but other WRT drivers like Robin Frins from the 17 car there as well, because anything they can pick up is all useful.
Oh, I mean, you're talking about hundreds of seconds in these 3 qualifying sessions, so anything you know before you get into the car. I mean, I heard Robin Frins saying, is it flat? I don't know which corner you'd be referring to, because the only corner that I know that's a corner really is the Curva Grande. It's flat, obviously. So it's not Lesmo 1, certainly not Lesmo 2. I don't know where else he could be, but you know, that's the kind of information that a driver would like. But just to go back, David, to what is going to happen in these pit stops, the car must stop parallel to the garage. First of all, if it's not, the pit stop isn't allowed to get underway. The other thing, which is a big change and it affects the drivers, they're not allowed on the way in down the pit lane to start to loosen off the shoulder straps, so that when they come to a standstill, the car, he unbuckles the seatbelt buckle and everything falls away. All those belts must be tight at the point when he stops, and then he can unbuckle it. The other thing that I didn't realize either is that the cars are not allowed to refuel until the air jacks are deployed and the car's off the ground. Little detailed changes, it's all to try, maybe to stop some of the teams who got into this habit of being clever and coming up with concepts of just shortening the time span. So now the car has to come to a standstill, it has to be up in the air before you can put the fuel hose, the refueling hose, onto the side of the car. And
the other thing that's changed is that as Q2 gets underway, green flag, we don't have this range that you can't leave the pit lane. If you remember, you could do a pit stop in under a time or over a time, but not between A and B. Well, that's gone. It was very confusing, and you had this strange situation of people sitting there for 10, 15 seconds waiting for the moment to go. Now, a pit stop must last, it's been increased slightly, in fact, overnight, to 72 seconds. So pit in to pit out is 72 seconds, and it's a system that works in other GT championships, Blancpain GT Asia, British GT, for example. The only difference here being that you can refuel as well, because it's a longer race, but it's going to be a 72-second stop, pit in to pit out. And if you're under that, because the timing system will give an alert, then you can expect a penalty to make up that shortfall.
Yeah, I mean, it's done to simplify the basic pit stop. The thing that one might question would be if somebody needs to come in unexpectedly towards the end of the race for what you would call a splash and dash, they would clearly, I would assume that they're only putting in maybe 10 litres of fuel. Would they be able to get in and out under 72 seconds, or would they have to hold the car there to ensure that they weren't under the 72-second delta time?
I think I need to check how the regulations are written, but my understanding is that if it's one of your regulation pit stops, which is for fuel, tyres and drivers, which you must do, that's a 72-second stop. Anything else is a splash and dash, or a bit of repair work, or that's a natural pit stop as quick as you can do it.
Okay.
So Q2 is underway. Now we have to start looking at a car that is fast on track, but think about averages. So we've got a variety of screens to confuse us, and the drivers are, in most cases now, a different driver in the car, because if you've got a 2-driver entry, it'll be the same driver that you saw in Q1. There's 23 Nissan, which is getting quicker and quicker and quicker as the weekend wears on. And it was Matt Parry driving the car in Q1. It is Lucas Ordóñez for Q2.
Yes, the Nissan, like the Evo 2 Bentley, slightly BUP'd, but that can be adjusted over the course of the weekend, because they are effectively completely new cars until the full potential of these cars is illustrated. They've been given a conservative BUP, not an advantageous one. But I mean, what happened overnight, and it's not something that is made public. It's between the team and the officials. If they do make a small adjustment, whether it's to the air restrictor in the intake, ignition, advancing the ignition a little bit, aero on the car, all these little details, they can make 3 or 4 tenths of a second lap difference. But also it makes a difference to the driver, because the car will feel a little bit more vitality.
Yeah.
Sometimes a car can feel flat and lethargic. Give it a bit more pep, and all of a sudden it changes.
And Ordóñez, who's one of those drivers that's come from the PlayStation Academy, is another very, very talented GT racer. So going strongly on this outlap. So So we have, again, 15 minutes for this part of qualifying. And track space, John, is virtually impossible to find, isn't it? Unless you're first out. But even then, the danger is you catch the back of the queue of cars, aren't you, at the end of that first lap?
I mean, it is difficult. Whatever way you look at it, it's difficult. And Lucas Ordóñez pushing very, very hard. He's got fastest overall sector time in sector 2, but he's got 4 cars ahead of him, and really, are any of them going to bother getting out of his way? Well, probably not. Parker Bentley does the right thing, stays on the left of track, and then it allows Ordóñez to get down the inside, but that'll be a marginal compromise, going in on a very shallow angle, not being able to get on the throttle quite as early, but drives the car out of the exit of Parabolica. He's going to go quickest overall initially, one would assume, 49.6.
And then Guy Smith's Bentley, which has now got Jules Gounon at the wheel of it, that goes fastest on average. So a 49.006, a 49.065. The average is a 49.035. It is going to get complicated, all of this, but let's just tell you for the moment that fastest within Q2, as you look at in the middle, Jonathan Buncombe, himself a former racer, Alex standing with him, and Matt Parry. It is now the Mansiliao Lamborghini Gallardo that's gone fastest, 1:48.573, and that's also topping the average on a 1:48.710.
I mean, that's the Gallardo, which is a car that we've sort of kind of, over the last 2 seasons, when we look at Hurricanes, Lamborghini Hurricanes, suddenly we've got a Gallardo, and it's been competitive all the way through the last 2 days, and again, 1:48.7, a good time.
Absolutely. Now, how that car is going to fare over the next 10 minutes, we'll wait and see, because others have got to do a time and improve. And as they do so, we now get the Ricardo Sanchez Nissan up to 3rd in the session. But we do now have a different average order from the session order. 72 Ferrari, well worth watching. And at the wheel of the car for Q2, it will be Miguel Molina. Goes over the timing line. Where does that put him now? 9th fastest, 1:51.225.
Well, he's just been down to 10th place. The times are changing almost by car. Oh, very wide on the exit. Keeps the car pointing straight, so not a problem. Bentley 8 being squeezed coming down into Parabolica. That'll be an interesting outcome at the exit of the corner.
So that's the car that was quickest early on. Mansiliao at the wheel of it. Lucas Ordóñez has now gone fastest in this session, 1:48.115. But the number 54 Jaguar is fastest on average. So it's Adrian Zaug, 3rd quickest, but fastest on average, that car. You following all this, everybody?
Well, I mean, I'm just looking at Lucas Ordóñez. I mean, at 1:48.115, that's about the quickest time we've seen over the weekend to date.
Mansiliao in replay.
Yeah, I mean, always a concern at the exit of Ascari. If you catch that gravel slightly earlier, it will rotate your car. We saw one of the McLarens last year. Was it Nicola Ventus, I think it was?
That's right, yeah.
Who ended up spearing the car into the barriers on the left-hand side of the track, and actually it led to him missing a number of races.
He hurt himself a bit, didn't he, in that? Yeah. So times are shuffling all the while. Romain Dumas has just gone 5th in the session in the Porsche, 1:49.039. That's 4th on average. Number 114, that's the new Lexus we talked about pre-session. And Stefan Ortelli is given away now to the very experienced Marcus Paltela, who, if you cast your mind back a long time, was a mainstay of the Mark VDS BMW Z4 programme, Spa 24-hour winner. And here he comes then, behind Sandy Mitchell in the Barwell Motorsports Lamborghini. So Fontana for the Emil Frey team is the fastest. We've just had Marvin Kirchhofer go 2nd in the session. And pole position on average now, Miguel Molina, 1:48.411. So the Ferrari, 3rd in the session and quickest on average.
Well, that's what you get. You get a good lineup of drivers, all pretty good average speeds. The Ferrari now quickest overall on a 48. So what is the average?
48.411.
Yeah.
So 48.4 and a 48.3 averages out to 48.411. There is Romain Dumas in the Porsche number 911. He's down to 12th in the session, but 8th he is on average.
Well, he's behind the 63, which is a pretty quick car, but he gets it wrong in the middle of the entry into the Ascari. Suddenly the back end stepped out and he had to take off the throttle, get it all. Look at the cockpit, look at the sophistication of the switchgear. He's backed out of it. He knows that he's lost a lap, a potentially good lap. He's backed off, lets everybody get clear. Hopefully he'll get a clear run. Let's look again and see. He just turns in, and then all of a sudden he's got to make the correction And one of those moments where at that part of the Ascari chicane, here's the onboard shot again. There it is. Oh, quick hands.
Yeah.
Very quick hands.
Big bite of curb and rather unsettled him, didn't it, that? So, the Porsche wastes that lap. Who else do we have improving? We've got Molina, I've given you. There, a big dive up the inside by number 63 Lamborghini. This is the car now with Christian Engelhardt at the wheel of it. Last year's endurance champion, of course. And where is he to be found? Not yet in the top 15. 17th in the session is Engelhardt. 13th on the grid.
Not what we would have expected.
No.
Not what we would have expected. The two Bentleys in this session, 7th and 8th. So, in fact, it's just, as I said, it's just constantly changing. So cars coming across the line recording their quickest laps. If you look back at the 63 Lamborghini, I thought we didn't see a lot of them running yesterday. Again, a lot of tire saving from the front running teams. But the time hasn't come so far. And as they get into the second run, the averages are going to be more difficult to claw back if they put Mirko Bortolotti into it for the final qualifying session. That's putting a big responsibility on his shoulders.
Well, there is Engelhardt, who has spent most of his early days racing in Porsches, but has fitted into Lamborghini Squadra Corsa very, very well indeed. And someone's had a big shunt coming out of the Variante Ascari. Is that an Aston Martin or a Mercedes? It's an Aston, I think.
It is a big shunt. That's the problem. You come out and you catch that gravel, you rotate the car, it goes 90 degrees. This may be a red flag.
I was about to say that, and you're right, it is a red. The session is stopped. So you've got a car in a dangerous place and debris on the road, and the session is stopped. 5 minutes of 15 remain. Well, they'll only really get one flying lap at best, won't they?
They would get one flying lap. I mean, it is qualifying, so I think that it will be restarted. So you've got the 5 minutes, so an out lap's going to be just under 2 minutes. You get one flag. You might squeeze two in, but it depends just the damage, whether there's damage to the barriers, which is be the thing that could cause a further delay. Luckily, those cars that were on the lap coming into Parabolica would have been aware that the red flag had been displayed. So you can see there the marks on the track. The car virtually turned sharp left, and that is a heavy hit on the front, the left front in particular. Of course, all the bodywork is principally bodywork. The engine is so far back in the chassis these days, so low in the chassis. Look at the skid marks. And
it's 49 Sally Yoluch, I understand, in the Mercedes run by Ram Racing.
Right.
So Sally Yoluch had done Q1, should have been in Q2.
Look, here we go. Oh yeah, it just comes round and just noses it heavily.
Oof.
And then goes into a series of pirouettes.
I would be surprised if that car was on the grid, wouldn't you?
Well, we've seen cars, because so much of the front of the car is just it's just structure, bodywork, and radiators, not an awful lot else. It depends whether there's been anything, the main chassis, if you might call them the deformable structures, if they've been severely damaged, then that'll be a new chassis for that car. It'll be only when the team get it back into the garage and have a chance to look at it very closely. But you're probably right, it looks like that car may be too heavily damaged to have it take part in any further proceedings.
I mean, we've got under 5 hours before the race starts, and they need to be on the grid half an hour before.
Yes.
So you're looking at 4 hours in real terms to do the work, and of course, make sure that Sally Yoluch is okay. We saw him get out of the car. He will go to the medical centre because that is protocol, any incident, large or small.
I mean, if anything, he'll be dizzy because the car rotated very quickly, about 4 times. And it's just the disorientation of where am I. But again, the impact would have been quite a big hit, a very sudden stop. So you get the jolt on your seat belts, your shoulders, the crutch strap, and then you're just simply spinning round and round and round.
So out comes the flatbed to retrieve the car, and everybody else will make their way into the pit lane.
But just to think, the exit of Parabolica, sorry, the exit of the Ascari chicane is an area you have to be careful not to let the car run too wide too early, because if you run the curb and you let that right rear wheel drop off and catch the gravel, it will just instantly rotate whatever the car is, and of course then it's suddenly pointing directly at the barrier, and you're still doing maybe the best part of 80-90 miles an hour and it ain't going to stop on that distance.
So Sally Yorick, who had a few incidents in British GT a few seasons back, but has come on hugely as a driver, but that's not, I'm afraid, a good way to start his season. Big shunt. Number 7, Bentley then into the pit lane. It's 14th on the grid provisionally. Jules Gounod at the wheel, 10th in Q2. So you can see how this new Bentley, the second generation Bentley, looks. Number 8 comes in. This is the car that has a name, incidentally. It's been a tradition at Bentley that they name number 8.
It's not Betsy.
It's not Betsy. It is Valeria, which is the name Andy Soucek is going to give to his daughter when she is born in October. Last year, last year's Bentley number 8 was called Basil. Not because it was faulty, but because it was a social media, what should we call the car, and Basil was the winner.
I mean, it's a British team, it's a British brand, it's an iconic British brand. Why do we not just call it Fred?
I do like the way, though, that Bentley has this nod to the heritage with the number painted on the radiator at the front. Yes, it's a modern shape, but Bentley very aware of the heritage going back to the 1920s. Right, let's have another look at poor Sally Yorick's
He didn't really get the car over the curb. I don't know what he did. It just suddenly the back end is going, it's going.
It was wrong coming out of the corner.
And he was on the throttle because you can see, look, the rubber, the inside wheel spinning like mad. Laying rubber, and then the realization, oh, expletive, oh. And there you get an illustration of what carbon fiber does when it's hits something pretty rapidly and pretty hard. It scatters to the four winds. And you can see the end, well, the radiators are gone, oil cooler probably gone. Whether the chassis itself, the two legs, the deformable structure that form part of every GT car made these days, whether they're damaged or not, that will be, I think, the key to whether the team will feel it's possible to do something. Mercedes-Benz have a customer service, AMG have a customer service at every event. So you just go along to your parts man and you pick the bit you want, and before you leave, you pay the bill. Or in some cases, you might get a credit.
Indeed so. Seeing that Tiffany Dell has just
was he cheating again
on Twitter, he'll want to know that the Bas Barwell car, because Tiff's brother Chris is a huge part of Barwell Motorsport, 18th on the grid provisionally. Tiff is where 78 can be found. Michele Beretta's car, 77, is a little bit lower down and not on our timing pages at the moment. We are going to go live again shortly. The fast lane of the pits is open.
Can't believe it's Chardonnay o'clock already in England.
So the track clear of battered Mercedes. That was a very swift recovery operation, wasn't it?
It was also a very swift cleanup. So all the bits of carbon fiber, and there's a blower on that tractor just blowing away all the residue, they basically cement dust they put down to absorb the principally water, but may have been an oil cooler as well. So we've got these 5 minutes and 4 seconds remaining. Yeah. So those that are planning to go out need to be in their cars all set to go. And is that, which Marshall's post are we looking at there? It's difficult to see. So great job by the Marshals here at Monza to get the circuit ready to go. Obviously no damage to the barriers. That would indicate that they had to be repaired. But it is a popular place to have an accident.
Yeah.
And we've seen this in previous seasons.
So the Marshals go back to post, and as soon as the track is clear, Alain Adon will give the signal to get the session underway. The fast lane, as I mentioned, is open, and therefore there are more and more cars queuing up at the end ready to go out. So some teams might bail and use this extra time to get ready for Q3. Others feel they still have something to achieve. The medical car just came back out of the pit lane.
A speed trap at the end of the pit lane. The guys you could see were ready to capture some poor fool coming down the pit lane.
But the stewards were quite busy yesterday with people speeding. So the Marshals are ready in the pits. The Marshal you're looking at stands in front of the line of cars. You can just see there to the left-hand side.
What a vista.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if you want a racetrack that sums up what motor racing, the spirit of motor racing, is all about, I know we should say Silverstone, but there is something magical about Monza, and it's always been one of my all-time favorite venues, both as a circuit to drive on, but also to come to an event. As we see the 49, is it coming back to the pitch, just coming down behind the barriers. So the damage to it, actually, with all the bits that fell off, kind of put back into place. That car is going to make its way back into the garage. It's going to go down the back of the pit lane. I don't know how they're going to find it or get it into its pit box. I doubt it will be. It'll probably just go straight to the back of the transporter, and they'll assess it at that point, and then the decisions will be made. So number 49, as they say, hors de combat.
It is indeed. There, however, the line of cars ready to go. Alex Buncombe in the background. Lucas Ordonez with his back to us. Alex will go in Q3. So Nissan with a shrug from Lucas Ordonez. He's fastest in this part of qualifying, so Lucas probably feels there's no point going out.
Well, I mean, I would think that the Nissan team, Bob Neville and the guys from Didcot, are delighted with this new car's performance, because when I spoke to them on Friday, they were saying, well, they've got a number of issues we're trying to work our way through. Well, clearly they've done that work pretty successfully to have the car currently. I think that's the single quickest lap that we've had so far this weekend.
I would go along with that by about 0.8 of a second, although the car's now running in cooler temperatures, and that's a cooler part of the day than we've seen hitherto. So we are back in business, but it's 4 minutes and change on the clock. I mean, it was 5 minutes and a bit when the green flag flew. You've lost a minute if you're at the back of the queue before you get onto the circuit.
I mean, it's a nightmare. This is the thing that teams, particularly those at the pit lane entrance, looking down to the ASA cars, fairly early in the pit box, so they may just decide not to bother.
Yeah, no wheels on the Eric Debard car there, so I think they will use that time more productively, because what are you going to achieve? You might get one flying lap in, you're going to have a load of traffic around you.
The reason why they won't do it is because if they put their cars out on track, it's an out lap, one time lap, maybe you might squeak a second time lap, and an in lap. That's 4 laps of wear on a tyre, which may not have actually given you any improvement in time. So judge that against the upside of having a set of tyres that's 4 laps fresher. I would go with a 4 lap fresher tyre for the race.
Indeed,
and go and attempt to try and make a small improvement.
Well, you can wipe this lap off because it's the outlet from the pit lane, and then at the end of the next we'll start to see if anybody can improve. But just listen to the engines, they blast past us here. Tell me you've not turned up the volume on your TV. If you haven't, you've got no soul. There, Mathieu Vazivier's car coming up towards the timing line, and onto a flying lap he will now go. So we'll start to see whether there are going to be improvements in sectors here.
Car, I have to say, looks great. The colour scheme is this sort of almost like battleship grey colour, very trendy colour if you're buying a brand new high-end sports car, to have that sort of metallic, almost stealth style of colour. But it always looks great, particularly when you see it at high speeds here at Monza or at Silverstone. Sounds great as well.
Absolutely.
The howl of the V12 engine.
And I know that there are championships that are waving the flag for electric, and they have a completely different sound, but there is still something fabulous about a GT grid.
The whine of a V12 engine as opposed to the whine of an electric motor, it's a bit of a no-brainer in my book.
Exactly. So out of the Lesmo corners comes Mathieu Vazivier, looking impressive. Comes Jake Dennis, I should say. The Vazivier car from Q1, Jake Dennis at the wheel of it for Q2, and 7th it is on average. Now, Jake Dennis, 13th, but thanks to Mathieu Vazivier's efforts, 7th on the grid provisionally. So
Jake Dennis, pretty committed in this lap. This is a lap he's going to try and gain some improvement. He's done so in the middle sector.
Maxime Martin watches on with Sophie Perra from SRO.
We're getting hyperventilated, looking at themselves on TV, but they're coming into parabolic.
If you see the number on the windscreen, let me just quickly explain that 013 is its position in the session. So 13th is the car. When we get to the race, you'll see that Lumirac display alternate between the short code for the driver's name and where it is in class. So although we'll be referring more likely to overall positions, it will display the class position because that's what the teams are after. And Jake Dennis goes 7th, and that puts it 6th now on the grid on average.
So Christopher Mies behind the wheel of number 1, taking over from Dries van Voor. Again, looking to seek an improvement. Previous best 148.7, 148.5. So goes 8th, but average time is still quickest overall.
Yeah. On average, it's 37 thousandths quicker than Miguel Molina on the grid. And what have we got? 40 seconds of the session to go. So it was worth people going out. That's been proven now because we have had improvement.
But the people that were, let's say, at the very beginning of the pit lane, they've decided to leave their cars up on their actual stands and not bother. But in the case of the #1 Audi, that's been very worthwhile. It's been very worthwhile for looking through Christopher Mies, Jake Dennis, and the Aston Martin 76. So those two cars are clearly beneficiaries of getting the opportunity to run in these last 5 minutes.
The checkered flag will be imminent, and of course then the teams have to cycle through the next driver's bench. They didn't go out again, incidentally, so they are ready to go for Q3, looking down the pit lane, 1 or 2 other teams.
It's Alvaro Perez in the 43 Mercedes, the third car in line. They currently are 5th in this session and 4th overall between the 2 sessions. So again, Alvaro Perez, but not showing green or purple so far. If he can get 3 oranges, he might actually make a small improvement, but it's not likely to make a big difference to his overall position in this session or in his overall position. Currently, overall, they are 4th. Checkered flag is out. So Alvaro Perez comes through Parabolica, runs the car wide out to the white line, tries to mitigate the amount of side slips that comes across, takes the checkered flag, and it is 48. That was a 48.459. That was actually Alvaro's best lap.
And 5th on average. So we are just under 8 minutes away from Q3 getting underway, so it's a pretty tight turnaround. Don't forget you've got the slow in lap to do as well before we get the drivers change and then done for the final part of qualifying. Now there is the Jelmer Berman driven Mercedes. A very understated livery from the Black Falcon cars for this season, but Jelmer Berman really pushing on in the sectors. He did a personal best in sector 2. Will break the beam. There's the checkered flag. Jelmer Berman goes up the order to 4th in the session and up to 7th on average.
So that's again a big step forward for the #4 for Black Falcon. Again, that car, Jelmer Berman, considered, I certainly considered anyway, to be a sleeper. Lucas Stolz and of course Marco Engel as his co-drivers.
Now this is the Stracker 44 that's going for the pit lane, so ignore that car. That was the Adrian Tombe, Lucas Auer, David Fuminelli entry. Lucas Auer doing that stint. That whole car put together really by Christian Vitores and by Mercedes. Christian Vitores out of the DTM last season, finally got a project together again, put the teammates around him, and then went down with a form of glandular fever, so can't drive. So Lucas Auer, the nephew of Gerhard Berger, brought into the car for certainly this weekend, but it's now a big question mark over poor Christian Vitores because they don't know how long it will be before he's back to full health.
Well, we had this discussion yesterday, we call it nurse's disease. And normally, glandular fever, you're under medical care for probably up to a month, maybe 6 weeks, just depends how severely it has depleted your basic. You just lose all energy, you've got no vitality whatsoever. And it's a virus, and you have to let it get through your system and move forward.
So let's have a look at where we stand at the moment then within this qualifying session, and on the average times now. It is the #1 Audi at the top of the times from 72 Ferrari. The SRO Motorsports Aston Martin up to 3rd, ahead of the Emil Frey Jaguar number 54, with Dries van Toor, Miguel Molina, Jake Dennis, Alex Fontana being the drivers that have done the times. 5th fastest is Alvaro Perez's time from number 43 Mercedes. 6th quickest Stein Schotthorst for a Tempto. 7th Jelmer Berman. 8th is Lucas Ordóñez. 9th Marvin Kirchhofer. 10th Mads Siljehaug. 11th Andy Soucek, and 12th fastest now is the 88 Mercedes Daniel Juncadella. Then you've got the time set by Denis Bulatov ahead of Jules Gounod. Romain Dumas next from the Lucas Auer time. Christian Engelhardt 17th. Calvin van der Linde 18th from Sandy Mitchell. And then Ricky Collard going strongly in the Rover Racing BMW. Look further down the order, 54 cars in total, and the jumbled grid is certainly evident with this great peppering of the different brands all the way up and down the order. We've got Ricardo Sanchez in the older Nissan 31st, Koen Ledegaard 33rd, a better run that time in the McLaren. Yeah, Kappa quite a long way down, surprisingly. But don't forget now the average, if you've had a slower driver in the first session or in that second session, then it's starting to balance out. number 31 Bentley will have Seb Morris for the next part. You can anticipate that to come up the order. And so too 26 when Marcus Winkelhock takes it down. So there are cars yet that we haven't seen the best from, and we'll change the order accordingly. Andrea Bertolini, for example, in number 53 Ferrari, is another driver to fall into that category. We are just under 4 minutes away from Q3 starting, and Chris Harris, Alexander West, now Chris Goodwin to take over number 188. Ling Kang will do the next stint in 33. And number 5, Rui Aguas, has got some work to do from the bottom of the times. Lucas Ordóñez, though, has been very impressive so far. Let's hear from him next.
Lucas, now you were fastest in the last session, but this year it's all about those averages.
Yeah, very happy again. P1 here in Monza. It's always really feels really nice to be in P1, but it counts all the average times for the 3 sessions, and yeah, but very happy. We were struggling with the setup with the car during the whole weekend. New car, learning every time we get in the car, and well deserved for the mechanics. No, they slept only 2 hours last night. It looks like a 24 hours for them, and yeah, well, feel really proud for them. No, they worked really hard to have this car today on Sunday, and let's see. Alex will go in for the last session, and fingers crossed to be in the top 10 for the start of the race, and to avoid what happened to us last year, where we crashed in the start of the race. So yeah, but now really happy, excited, and can't wait for the race.
Now tell us, what's new about the car?
Well, the car is everything is new inside. Outside doesn't look that many change, but inside, the weight distribution, the aerodynamics in the front, center of gravity, we improved that, but unfortunately not the testing we expected and we wanted during the winter, but here we are, proving that the GTR can be strong here in Monza, and you know, thanks to RGN boys, because again, they slept only 2 hours, and they put us a great car for qualifying.
Well, it's all down to Alex now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know I've been talking about how close individual sessions are, but just having a cursory look at the averages, we've even got on the average of 2 different drivers in 2 different types of car, an identical average time being set. You've got 2 cars with an identical average. I mean, that's just amazingly competitive.
I mean, it's frightening, because I mean, if you take the average of the 2 sessions so far, the top 20 are covered by 7/10 of a second. But it is the differences between the 2 drivers that you point out.
Oh.
I mean, it is intensely competitive.
Oh.
And you know, those that sat out those final 5 minutes, will they now regret it? Or will they be looking at the bigger picture and feeling, well, we didn't use our tyres, we've got 4 extra laps on those sets of tyres, we can maybe make better use of that when it comes to the event starting 3 hours, getting underway at 3 p.m. local time. You know, it's a judgment teams have to make. Is it offset against a quicker, better, good position, or having fresher tyres for when you get into the event?
So you have an Aston Martin and you have a Lamborghini Gallardo. 2 different drivers have driven each car, and on average time they are tied to the 1,000th of a second. I think that's insane.
Do you not think they could do any better? Could not one of them have gone quicker?
I blame the timekeepers. If they did it to tens of thousands of seconds and we had a 4th digit, we'd be fine. So we are good to go, because Q3 is about 20 seconds away from starting. Good to see so many fans enjoying the sunshine today as we are getting set, and the flag will be waved in a moment at the end of the pit lane. And there is a look down the pit straight coming out of the Parabolica. The pit lane absolutely full of desirable GT cars. Multi-million euro entry. The green flag showed, the light goes green. The race director, Alain Ardon, gives the signal that we are in business. And out they pour. And Bentley, having of course got the pit box pretty much at pit out, sees number 7 go first. And for the purposes of Q3, number 7 Bentley is going to be Stephen Kane. So that's going to be spectacular, to say the least.
Indeed. And Stephen, I suppose still within the Bentley group, is considered to be the guy that you put in for the 3rd stint in a 3-hour race, or in qualifying that you would imagine is going to get the best out of the car. We sort of ventured the view that maybe the 3rd session of this revised qualifying system would be the quickest. It's also going to be the session where if anybody's got a new set of tyres, they're going to put it on now, in my view.
Why are so many cars not going out straight away. Q1, Q2, we saw a long line, everybody on their toes, want to go. Now, it's arguably the most important part of qualifying. It's Q3, this is where most teams have saved their gun driver for. And yet, looking up the pit lane, there's almost this sense of ambivalence now that nobody wants to go.
I mean, everybody's rolling the dice. I mean, whether you go early and you get in and get your time, to see the Nissan and the Bentley out on it immediately, the danger they face is when they come round to start their flying lap, will they find the field of people on their out lap trying to set a time. So it's a gamble, whichever way you look at it, but it's going to be principally for these, you call them gun drivers, maybe the quicker of the three drivers in any of these either pro-am or am teams. There'll be one flying lap, nail it. That's what a pro driver is programmed to do.
Sure. I mean, another part of why are people not all pouring out straight away is some of the teams may well want to see another team do a target time. They know what to aim for. Then they know exactly what they've got to deal. It's like pit lane poker, isn't it? So once they've seen what they've got to aim for, they can show their hand. They can deal accordingly.
And the other thing that teams tend to think, and we see it in motor racing across the board, is it's always the end of a given session, whether it's a 10-minute or a 1-hour session. It's normally the end of that session when you've got your freshest or newest set of rubber that will show the best time overall in the session. So maybe they're going to hang back in the belief that if they go out with 5 minutes to go, they want to do one flying lap, bring it back in, and that's going to be all they need to do.
So Stephen Kane will be the first man to watch. Number 7 Bentley. This is the Bentley with no name. 8 is named, 7 doesn't get a name, it's just a very quick car. And it comes into the Variante della Roggia, and behind the snaking Nissan. You've also got Struan Moore in that Nissan, in fact, doing a very good first sector time. So all of this is going to shuffle around as each car comes pouring over the timing line. Most people have now ventured out, not all, but most. And so Stephen Kane on his next lap is going to find the circuit very busy indeed.
He's just going to pray that the run up into the Ascari chicane, and there's nobody directly ahead of him, as we can see. The Lamborghini just going in is not going to come into play into the Ascari chicane, isn't going to come into play into Parabolica, and hopefully for Stephen Kane, his first venture out onto the 3.6 mile, 5.7 kilometre circuit will be all he needs. All he wants to do is get that lap in and put that number 7 Bentley where he wants it to be, at the front, pretty much as it was 1 year ago. Probably not going to go any further than that.
Well, no, indeed, and it'll be interesting to see who is the start driver. Traditionally, it is Guy Smith who starts. The best result that Bentley has had was a third here in 2016, which actually was from the number 8 car. Over the line goes Stephen Kane there, and he did a 1:49.161, but not as quick as Struan Moore in the Nissan, who has done a 49.157. Rui Aguas, who has really got to haul that car up the order. Blimey, has he hauled it, because he's now at 6th. It was 54th at the end of Q2 on average. It's now 4th. But Stephen Kane's time means that number 7 Bentley goes on to pole position. If you take the average, Stephen Kane's time now means that number 7 Bentley is at the top of the grid.
And I think Stephen would have been disappointed with that first flying lap, but bearing in mind he hasn't been in the car since yesterday, so he's done an out lap, a flying lap, and that's not a great place to try and make a pass into the second Lesmo, particularly on a highly competitive car like 911. Behind the 63 Lamborghini, Porsche pulls over, lets the Audi go through. Struan Moore in the 2017 and earlier, the original GTR Nissan, now Seatfield in the Jaguar, and it's changing again every second as a car comes across the start finish line. 48.083, that's the fastest single lap that we have seen so far this weekend from Team Parker Racing.
Seb Morris, fantastic. Seb Morris goes fastest in the session, 1:48.083.
Hey up, Seb.
Well, he's North Wales, but yeah, he's a good northern lad.
No, that's an outstanding time. I mean, where did that come from? That's last year's Bentley.
Precisely.
Quickest overall.
So the reigning British GT champion, Seb Morris, won that with Rick Parfitt, goes quickest by 7/10 of a second. And now on average, Andy Soucek is at the front because of Maxime Soulet's time. No, he's not, because now pole position on the grid is Alex Fontana, thanks to a Michael Grenier time in this. So 54 Jaguar, you're following all this, is now on pole position. So it's Jaguar, Bentley, 54.87, and then 1:14 is 4th, Norbert Siedler's time. Seb Morris is fastest in Q3, and that puts that car 7th on the grid.
I mean, it's slightly confusing for us to try and bring you the times per session and the average, but it isn't half exciting.
Absolutely.
Because it's really mixing and matching the field in a way it's not done before.
It's the knock-on effect, isn't it, in part, because you see a quick car, but then the averages shuffle the grid so much more than an individual time. So now Patrick Niederhauser goes fastest in the Lamborghini Gallardo, which you could kind of argue ought to be in historic GTs. Well, it's an old car, but blimey, it's quick.
You've got two old cars, effectively old cars, currently first and second quickest.
And the Nissan is 11th, the 2015 spec car. Niederhauser, Morris, then up to third has gone Davide Rigon, and that puts the 72 Ferrari onto pole position.
In many people's minds, a Ferrari should be in pole position at Monza, whatever the category that they're racing in. Certainly it'll bring an emotional to Davide Rigon if that's where they will start. And there is, still how many minutes to go? 8 minutes to go.
Now what about number 63? Because that now with Mirko Bortolotti at the wheel, chipping its way up the order. And is this car going to do enough on this lap to catapult it back into the order at the front of the grid? Mirko Bortolotti breaks the timing beam, goes fourth fastest and 7th on the grid.
More like it, but needs more. I mean, starting anywhere in the top 3 rows of the grid, you've got to think any of those 6 cars have got to be potential winners. Well, you've got to take now the 63 car provisionally on the 4th row of the grid. Mirko Bortolotti overall, the 63 car 4th row of the grid, 8th quickest. But you know, 7 minutes and change remaining. Anything is liable to happen and can happen.
So that is the Ferrari of Davide Rigon, which is 3rd in the session. Who else has just gone quickly? 88, Raffaele Marciello has improved 6th in the session, 6th on the grid. And we've got 7 minutes to go as Rigon gets dive bomb there. This could end in tears because that's a very brave move up the inside by the Audi. It didn't work, but the Attempto car of Jeffrey Schmidt trying to force open the door, the former Porsche Carrera Cup Deutschland and Supercup racer, made a move, but that could have come to disaster, couldn't it?
Well, he thought there was an opportunity to go down the inside, and fortunately there wasn't contact, but it was pretty close, and that was whether a misjudgment or a misunderstanding of what was going on as we look at the 54 Jaguar, which at one point was the quickest car on the circuit and still is actually 2nd quickest overall on the front row. I mean, ask the cognoscenti in the pit lane or on the paddock, where will the Jaguar be? Well, currently it's now back down to the 2nd row because the number 1 Audi has put itself back up onto provisional front row of the grid, and on it goes again, just can't keep up.
Alex Riberas is 14th fastest in the session, but that time has put number 1 back onto the front row of the grid. This is where the grid is full of shuffling because of these averages. We've got Mick Grenier now, fastest in the session, number 54 in the Emil Frey Jaguar. There it is, and that puts him up to 2nd on the grid. So it's Ferrari, Jaguar, Audi, and then Mercedes, Lamborghini Gallardo, and Aston Martin. Fascinating session, isn't it?
I mean, it's a real mix and match, like a licorice all sorts grid.
Stefan Rattel will be watching this saying, yep, we've got it right, giving you something else to think about and get excited about in GT3 racing.
Nicky Thiem coming down in the Aston Martin, that very distinctive blue band around the nose. Normally Aston Martins would be British Racing green with a yellow band, but the gunmetal silver and the blue, I think, is quite fetching.
It's classy, isn't it? Over the timing line goes the Ferrari fight there. 5 minutes on the clock, through they turn. And Giancarlo Fisichella goes fastest of everybody all weekend, 1:48.018. So he's fastest in the session, but he's not in the top 20 on the grid.
Pro-Am car.
Absolutely.
And I mean, for Giancarlo, well, he's coming in this lap because he overran the chicane. He knows that any effort will now be wasted. Keep the tyres, save the tyres. But that's the balance of a Pro-Am car. You've got the Pro driver. Now that would, last year, have had that car starting from pole position. Yep. I think the system that's been introduced this year is a better system for everybody. And it also means that the gentlemen or the AM drivers are not under the kind of pressure that has been previously the case. And Dries van Thor wondering what's happened to that front row starting grid position.
Yeah, it's been done back to the 2nd row now. But can Alex Riberas do anything about improving? The very slow Mercedes there in the background, hasn't it? Got some rear damage. Just wondered if the rear wing wasn't askew on the Mercedes, which might have been one of the Black Falcon cars. Just see if we get a shot. No, we won't see it coming into the pit lane, unfortunately, but just wondered if that had been off the road. So Fisichella, Mick Grenier, Patrick Niederhauser, Seb Morris, Alessandro Pierguidi, Davide Rigon is your top 6 in Q3.
On board with 43. Alvaro. Is it Alvaro? It is Alvaro. We had Alvaro on the second.
It's Perent's time
should be
that he's relying on.
Yes, it should be Maxi Goods.
Yes, but he was off the road at the Rogier chicane.
Yeah.
We've got 3 minutes and change on the clock. What else is going to happen in this?
Well, there's improvements through the field. 44 has gone up in this session, up to 13th place. That is David Fumanelli.
So on average, Davide Rigon is 8 thousandths, or number 72 Ferrari, 8 thousandths quicker than number 54 Emile Frey Jaguar. So you've had 3 different drivers in 3 different sessions in 2 different types of cars, 8 thousandths between them on the grid, on the average of the times.
And essentially what we have is the pro cars gravitating upwards to pretty much the front rows of the grid.
But we're not done yet, because Patrick Niederhauser was just an absolute best in the first sector in the Gallardo. Hans Reiter, you could argue with a point to prove, because he used to be Mr. Lamborghini, and it's now very much become Grasser Racing Team and then Barwell. And perhaps Hans Reiter is saying, don't forget about us, please. We can still do a good job. We can still make the Gallardo competitive. And he's developed the car for things like the domestic championships at the Blancpain Sports Club. Into the pit lane comes number 54. So Michael Grenier, reigning Lamborghini Super Trofeo Europe champion, comes down the pit lane, second on the grid in that car.
2 minutes remaining. Still a relatively busy racetrack. Many people will have used the best of their tyre, but the 24 Lamborghini again fastest overall in Sector 1. Nothing destructive or damaging in Sector 2. There it comes through, Parabolica coming up to complete yet another lap, and will this be something that disposes Giancarlo Fisichella as fast? It does on 47.8, David. The only car driver pairing to go under the 148.
Patrick Niederhauser, a winner in Sepang last weekend in a Mercedes, now in a Lamborghini Gallardo, goes quickest in the session by a 10th. Now that puts him 4th on the grid.
I mean, a lot of strange and new mixes well up the grid. That's outstanding. I mean, for the Ryder engineering team, I mean, they will be over the moon, because I think they are the leading Lamborghini at the minute.
On the grid, yes, and definitely in terms of pace. So
who's that? Stop Ben?
Just a break
I thought
on
the
camera
froze there.
Number 8 Bentley. Maxime Soulet, he's the man with the James Hunt style crash helmet. If you have a look at it, we'll try and get a shot during the race when he gets out of the car. But it's now embossed with gold leaf. He's got €500 worth of gold leaf on the crash helmet. Andy Soucek watching on with Vincent Abril in the pit lane in the garage. Some taking the flag in the pits early, some bailing out of the session. As over the timing line goes number 8 Bentley, and on that lap Maxime Soulet goes no faster. 8 is currently to be found 9th on the grid. Number 7 Bentley, 16th on the grid.
Yeah, that was disappointing, because Steve Kane, I didn't think, got the run that he would have anticipated. So he wasn't able to continue the progress the 7 had done in the first 2 stints. As we watch the 72 Ferrari, current provisional pole sitter. 7 seconds to go, so he will be allowed to complete this lap. He may choose not to. The traffic is going to be a mess coming up into this Scary chicane. So he, in my view, you can't improve on pole. All you can do is defend it. But there's nothing he's going to do with the traffic ahead of him to, in my view, be able to do more than that. The overall time they've got was 148.3.
Checkered flag is out, as you see on the screen, on the graphic. Well, I think it's a thumbs up for the new qualifying system, isn't it?
I think it's worked well.
Brilliant.
I think it is a clear step forward, and I think it is right that the quickest driver cars should start, and that the quickest drivers should also be at the front. So we get away from the issues that we had in previous seasons. Ferrari trying to sneak an extra half a metre coming across the start-finish line. Looking at the McLaren coming down into Parabolica. Just it looks tentative at that point. Well, there you see tentative is what you got.
Yeah.
And he just cuts back again and makes it into the pit lane. So it is not the easiest car for a driver. I mean, pro drivers handle it, but it took a lot of physical and mental effort to get the best from it. Number one, now in the second row of the grid, Dries van Voor did initially a very good job, but not able to consolidate it.
There's Marcus Winkelhock, who hasn't really shown the pace either. The car's quite a long way down on average, but even Marcus hasn't been able to haul it into the top 20 in that session. Emil Frey-Jagler, though, with a great job done. And Mikael Grenier's time, third in the session, putting the car second on the grid. Alex Fontana did a fine job early on as well. So it's a very, very jumbled grid, and it should give us a fascinating race.
Well, it's going to be a little cracker. Absolutely. And what I hope we will see is slightly more flexibility, which we saw in Zolder at the start of the sprint rounds, where when the cars come onto pit straight, they're being given a little bit of a heads up. Certainly they did in Zolder, to allow the front row of the grid to move, accelerate beyond the 80 kilometers per hour that they would normally have to do until the light goes green, to get that stretch and get away from this very impacted kind of field that we saw here 1 year ago.
We've got more into there. Off to find Mikhail Alyoshin and Davide Rigon for the group photograph. But a very happy team, SMP Racing. The Russian funding, but it's a car operated by AF Corsa, as you can see from the personnel around. And that will start on provisional pole position for today's opening race in Blancpain GT Series Endurance Cup. So the Italian fans are happy. It's a Ferrari at the top of the times. So let's have a quick look at the grid. Remember, this takes the average time for each car. And so it is the number 72 Ferrari of Alyoshin, Molinaro and Rigon that will be at the top, from Alex Fontana, Adrian Zaug and Mikael Grenier, which I don't think anybody would have predicted would on average be 8,000s away from pole position.
Absolutely not.
Third quickest, the time done by Dries van Tor, Patrick Niederhauser fourth. Fifth quickest, Alvaro Parent. Sixth fastest was Mauro Engel, ahead of Jake Dennis, Stein Schotthorst, Maxim Sule, Lucas Ordonez, Raffaele Marciello and Marvin Kirchhofer. 13th, Mirko Bortolotti. 14th fastest was Denis Bulatov, ahead of David Fumanelli, Robin Frins. 16th from Jules Gounon, Fred Macavicchi, Nico Bastien, and 20th, Font Pereira. 21st in the times, the Ortelli Palsula Lexus. And then look further down, Christian Kleen, Marco Seefried come next, Alessandro Pierguidi only 23rd. And how are we doing in terms of the BMWs? Well, 30th is where you find number 98, the first of the two Rover racing cars of Jens Klingman, Ricky Collard, Jesse Crow, just behind Ahmed Al-Harfi, Dan Mackay and Charlie Eastwood going well in the Aston Martin. The other BMW, 32nd, Marco Wittmann, Nick Katzberg and Alexander Sims. That's a long way down, surprisingly. Andrew Watson's McLaren in that third session only putting the car 34th. Number 19, Lamborghini, a long way back. And also 38th, Matt Griffin and Duncan Cameron. Matt Griffin with the last stint in that car. He only gets 60 minutes behind the wheel and he will have to really hustle on. Andrea Bertolini likewise in number 53. And Marcus Winkelhock's car I was talking about as it came into the pit lane, that's going to be 42nd on the grid. The car slowest on the average is of course one that missed out on Q3, so it only has 2 times to go on and it's put to the back of the grid, if it's there at all, Salah Joloch and Ewan Hankey. So it's been a very dramatic qualifying session and it's given us a fascinating grid as you look into super slow-mo at the Porsche of the Olaf Manthey team, running oh so wide, kicking up the dust and the gravel out of the Variante Ascari. Monza, a brilliant circuit, and it's just the right home for this opening round of the Endurance Cup. It was here that Blancpain Endurance Series, as was, started in the days when we had GT3 and GT4, but now looking forward to a great race, and it's time therefore that we heard from the pole drivers.
The boys on pole by 8,000th of a second. Unbelievable. Can you believe it?
Yeah, fantastic. We had problem on the radio. I didn't know that. I was pushing like crazy because, you know, I had a bit of not clear lap. Was not my best lap ever, but anyway, what I mean is important to be on top. Thanks to my teammates, they did a really fantastic job, really no mistake, and thanks to our engineer, all the SMP team, that they work very well. So, thank you guys.
Congratulations, boys.
Thank you.
So SMP Racing takes the pole position for the first Endurance Cup race of the season, and delight in the team. As we look at the highlights of the 3 parts of qualifying, cars pouring their way out onto the circuit, and straight away it was a very busy circuit, everyone having to try and find clear track space and try and keep out of trouble as best they could. Not everybody succeeded, 1 or 2 cars running wide, and straight away Dries Vanthoor was on the money in number 1 Audi, getting himself up to the pointy end of the grid. But a very strong combination of drivers in that car was always going to help. Number 23 was going strongly in the first part of the session as well, as Matt Parry hustled on. But number 24, Leonard Marionette, Lamborghini Gallardo, was another sleeper, which was always there or thereabouts, belying its age. A lot of effort was being put into the driving of that car. Romain Dumas getting a little bit crossed up as he powered his way through the Variante Ascari, but in Q2 we had this sizable accident for Salah Yoloch, doing a lot of damage to the Ram Racing Mercedes. So that brought out a red flag, and the track needed to be cleaned of all the debris, and it was a very swift operation by the Monza circuit staff to get qualifying back underway. The Maxi Goetz Alvaro Parant Mercedes, one to watch, looking strong. 72 Ferrari chipped its way up the order, both in terms of the overall grid and the individual session times, as Romain Dumas used every inch of available width of the road to try and wring a good lap time out of the Manthey Run Porsche. Number 7 Bentley, quick in Q3 with Stephen Kane at the wheel, but actually it was the Jules Gounon effort early on that helped it up the grid seemingly. Number 63 Lamborghini, another car that's going to be worth keeping an eye on when we get to the race itself, and we will start at 3 o'clock local time with plenty of drama in prospect. Join us for the race if you can. For now, from qualifying, from John Watson and David Addison, it's goodbye.